provide a list of suggested talking points for AI-102 Day 1 content. So I've come up with a list, and hopefully that list will make sense. So just using Copilot. So I actually didn't use Whiteboard for a long time. Oh, welcome, me. Don't believe you're on yesterday's call. So I just went in and asked for the provide a list of talking points for AI-102 Day 1. I'm going to generate a few more. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, it's the timing. Yeah, glad to be here now.
Whereabouts are you from, mate?
England.
Oh, England, nice. What sort of company do you work at there?
Healthcare.
Oh, nice. All right, that's a really good use case for AI. Lots of use cases for AI. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm doing at the moment is we're just about to do a recap from day 1. And so that's pretty handy for you at the moment because, you missed yesterday. But I'm just going to generate a few different things there. And then I'll insert them. So there's some real world examples as well that they've picked up. So I usually generate, maybe about 20 or so of these and then categorize them. So that's a really, really nice way to actually come up with some, maybe ideation on what you're working on. But for this one, it's going to be for a recap. So if you want to come up with use cases for AI, that could have been a nice one as well. And that's the nice thing about Whiteboard is this is pretty swish. This has actually been in there for quite a long time. I usually demo it for different reasons, but this one is a nice way to actually have a look at where we started yesterday. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. And some of the things we went through yesterday, if we just start off, and I'll write a little bit of a text around it as well. It's that time, may as well. Hopefully my pen is working. That's all right with the world. We talked about some of the prerequisites. So quite a lot, when we did the introduction yesterday, quite a lot of people had mentioned that they had done AI-900, which is a nice way to ease into AI there. But we've got lots of interesting courses now. We've actually got AI, I think it's 3,000 star. So each one of those, you can actually do an applied skill as well. So there's some really nice things. And if you're lucky enough to get involved in a month-long BR course, blended learning course, we actually, I think it's actually BR or PR, sorry. So we actually look at a project-oriented view of blended learning, and in particular, this one's called 801. And this one is a month-long AI course. And what you usually do with that one, so organisations register to actually do that one. So quite often if you're in the Australian time zone, it's going to be an Australian company. I haven't actually ever taught this particular format outside with different people from all over the different countries. This is more what you would see in these 4-day courses, for example, where we have people joining across the globe. But this one's really nice because you actually have like a morning session for 2 hours, and then you have an afternoon session, afternoon session for 2 hours. And you do that Tuesday through to Thursday. And that's really nice because you get to also have a look at, we have some office hours where you get in and talk about your own projects because it's all the same people from the same organisation. We usually split them into 2 different organisations perhaps, and then you get this really cool chalk talk, so you don't get bombarded with slides. But that's a really nice one to do as well. So we talked a little bit about some of the options, and of course people yesterday were really, really interested in doing the cert for AI 102. And of course with this, it's probably best to attend the 4-day course and then read through, or all of the MS Learn. Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't have had breakfast so late. The MS Learn content, and then I would do the labs twice. Labs by two twice maybe, and then do a little bit of practical examples, and then take the exam. I think that's so. We'll talk about that on the last day as well. So one of the things we were talking about is with our course objectives, we also talked about day one was all the services. So we just grouped that into, like vision, text, decision making. We've got uh, generative AI as well. So, and I think the other one was language as well. So we had a whole lot of different things that we were looking at there. We talked about the vision quite a bit yesterday because we got into vision in the afternoon. And with the vision, we had a few mishaps there. So one of the things we want to do is when we call our services, we want to be able to use Key Vault as well. So we had problems with Key Vault yesterday, so that you can store your secret in there so it's not in plain text. That was one of the key things with Key Vault, pardon the pun. And also we looked at vision as far as classification and extracting information like our text out of there, if it's and also the focal point. We also looked at face recognition. That was part of what we did in the afternoon. We also learned that there's two ways. There's lots of studios, that's for sure, but we also learned that there's two ways to create the AI services. One is an overarching service, and the other one is specific. So specific meaning it's either text or vision, etc. Or OpenAI, for example, Azure OpenAI. We're doing that, and then we saw basically for the week that what sort of things we're going to be looking at. So I'll just go and put that schedule in again, so you can see that. Put that in the chat window for you once again. So we're on day 2 there. And our plan for today is actually, just bring that over. Our plan for today is to go in and have a look at text. So it's pretty much conversation, natural language today. Like I said, for tomorrow we're going to be looking at generative AI, so Azure OpenAI and others, and also we're going to be looking at other things on day 4, which is including knowledge mining and document intelligence, which is pretty cool. So that's a sort of lineup. We'll probably, let me just go back to that. We'll try to take lunch at, put some of the key times in there. So 10:30 a.m. for morning tea, break, and a lot of people do their stand up then as well. 12:30 for lunch. So we don't, they're not hard and fast, some of these. It just depends how busy we get. And maybe we look to be going at 3 p.m. for afternoon tea, so the afternoon break. So that's what the schedule is for today. And some of the other concepts we talked about was vision yesterday, and we had some problems with vision. This is security, so we've got to try and go back and work through some of those things. We did quite a few labs yesterday, so there's also so many labs in there that you can't get them finished in the 4 days anyway. But the idea is to take them away and try them on your own subscription. And we also found out yesterday was I went and had a look at some of the links to say how long we usually have our labs for, and we normally have them for 6 months. A lot of people went in and said they expire in January, so I can't help but think there's going to be a big change to the labs, and that is why they've cut them off a little bit early this time. It does say that in Skillable that it's 6 months, but that's dependent on whether something might be happening at the time. So they may be actually moving all, I know that they were moving all the labs over into a different area, so perhaps that's why the outage and the big change, and then as a result you have a little bit less time, so just after over 3 months to actually get ready and do those labs, so a little bit of a disadvantage there. And And there's also lots of other things associated with AI. So start thinking about those use cases at work, what you're going to be using. We can discuss them if you like, although it is a little bit hard when we've got a mixed group because people are worried about, trade secrets and all that sort of thing. So we'll try to help you wherever we can, try and make it anonymous if possible. Okay, so the other thing we talked about was the sort of tooling. So we use VS Code yesterday, and usually get started, we do Shift Control P. So if you've used VS Code a bit, that actually allows you to bring up a command, which is git clone. Go and search for that, bring that up, and then you copy in the GitHub repository so that you can have that locally in your VS Code. So all the instructions are in the labs, but a lot of people don't necessarily know VS Code, so that's where I just give you a little bit more. And the two languages, of course, we'll be using. Of course, you could be using APIs, you could be using SDKs. If you're using SDKs, then we can go with Python or C#. So that's basically a little bit of a recap of yesterday. So hopefully that has helped everybody. And if you're interested in using Whiteboard, I think Whiteboard's actually free. And I'm not sure whether you get Copilot automatically. So give it a go and see whether you've got Copilot there. It might be part of the 365 license. So I'm just not 100% sure whether customers get that one out of the box or not. All right, so let's have a look at what we've got on for today. Natural language, and we're going to get into how we can use Q&A. And like I said yesterday, quite often with these services that we're creating, some of them are more that cognitive services that are more the classic AI that we've had in the past, and the newer one is around the large language models. But don't discount the older ones. Document intelligence is particularly useful, so that's one to think about. The chatbots, maybe their time has sort of passed, but if you're still maintaining some of the older ones, you're going to want to know about entities, utterances, and intents. So that's still a concept. The other thing that's really interesting is if you've used Copilot Studio or had a look at it, it has the old chatbot composer baked into it now, and it's been modernized to incorporate large language models now. So you can write your own copilots there and start to have your own chats. So the only one I would say is with the older chatbots, they're more targeted to specific events. So it could be that you can still use those. If in particular you're still having trouble grounding your large language models, then the older chatbots are a little bit more event driven, I would say. So when people say a keyword, it will then call a function. You can also do questions and answers and things like that. So I would say the older ones are not to be discounted. I don't even know whether people say, oh, LLMs are going to replace everything. I'm not even 100% sure about that now. They would have to get a lot better at the grounding to be able to do that and reduce the amount of hallucinations. So they're getting better every day, but at the moment, it's still relevant, some of the old AI as well. All right, let's have a look at analysing text. So this is using the old cognitive services, now called AI services. We'll have a look at building the questions and answers. We'll look at Lewis, which is the conversational language understanding app. That used to be called Lewis, if you remember that. We'll also have a look at classification, name, entity, extraction. So depending on the context of a word, sometimes it could be related to a different entity. So a good example there is Mars, the god, the chocolate bar, or the planets. So there's a few different options there. And then we'll have a look at, for the second part of the day, we'll have a look at speech recognition synthesis and translation there. So again, this is pretty much a parody now. I don't think translation's still got a little bit of a way to go. When you talk to our Japanese trainers, they often say, yeah, it's still not Japanese and Korean trainers still not translating it 100%, but you get the idea. But with speech recognition and the synthesis, I think that's pretty much a parody now. And you can see that in lots of good examples with robots and things like that actually just sound like, regular people. All right, so let's have a look at analysing text. So what we can do here is detect the language and also extract key phrases. That might be a precursor to more work coming, so part of a pipeline. Also analysing sentiment. One of the things I said there before was sarcasm really isn't nailed yet, so there's some more work to do there over the years. Detecting PII, that's getting better and better, so you want to be able to detect PII, but also things like racist comment so that you can hash it out so that you can't see it and mask it. There's also summarising text, but we know large language models probably do the best job at that, but we'll have a look at some of the older AIs. Entity and linked entities, that's the one I talked about with Mars before. And then translating text, so how to translate from one language to multiple languages, perhaps, to also look at languages that have symbols, to convert that to the Latin expression. So lots of good stuff. Terendate, welcome back. See you typing. Did you have a question?
It's just a great guide. I'm just lazy, so
that's all right.
I'll get around to it.
So we did a bit of a recap. That's all you missed so far.
Have a great day.
And then we're just getting into the language for today. All right. So the AI, Azure AI services. Now, again, you can put that as a individual service, or you can create multiple service. So one of the things with that one is probably more often than not going to create a text service instead of the overarching AI multiple services. And the reason for that is so that you can incorporate searching into that. So you need to be able to create, especially if you're doing something custom, you need to be able to create text AI service. And this is some of the things it can do. So it can look at detecting the language, like we said, whether it's English, French, whatever it is. We already saw that in yesterday's lab. Pick out the key phrases. So one of the things, I suppose, which is very useful is when we are ever exposed to voice of customer. So we might have had some good audio recordings there that we could then translate into text, and then we could translate that into key phrases. So you can extract out what people are mostly saying. So very, very useful to try and take that pulse without doing a survey on people. Sentiment analysis is a further extension of that to actually work out whether people are upset. So whether it's positive language that you can see, or whether it's negative, or whether it's neutral, or whether it's a combination of a few different things in a document, for example. So you can, depending on how many sentences you've got. Named entity recognition, so based on what is being said, it could be something like New York, so you can see that example there. Key phrases, the news, maybe that was from New York, and that's an entity, so straight away you can see that's a location entity. And entity linking is that one I was talking about before. So if you were to look up Manhattan or say something about Manhattan, then it would actually have a link back to Wikipedia about Manhattan. So that's an interesting one. We'll talk about that a little bit later with Mars and Venus. And then summarization. Yeah, I probably wouldn't use summarization too much, but if it's a step in a multi-step sort of process, yes, I might use it from here, but I might defer to generative AI for that one. And PII detection, although, generative AI does a good job at most of this, but you've just got to ground it. The other one there is PII detection, and that might be really, really useful when you're bringing content back from something like a production environment into a development environment, and you want to be able to remove that PII. That could be a nice part of that internal process for testing. And there's lots and lots of other things that you can do inside of here as well. So you take in a document or some sort of Word document or PDF or just a phrase that's captured in text, and then you're able to extract all that information out. Now, we used to be able to try this out in our API calls, but unfortunately they've been taken offline. I think they were just getting a bit aged, so it was back in 3.2 version of the language. I think we're up to 5 now, so it was getting a bit long in the tooth. But what you can do is you can go into Microsoft Learn. I can just show you an example there of where you can test out your APIs. I was just looking at that this morning, but I can point you in the right direction to that. So that one there. So as you go through the API list, you'll actually be able to see various options. You can then log on with whatever your user is for Azure, and then you can test that out. So you can put in an endpoint, you can put in change your body, and you'll get a request back there, for example. So you'll get the response back there. So this is maybe an interesting area. You'll see this, try it now. That's what you're looking for in any of the documents area. So if I go back to just table of contents there, and we go back to that, you'll actually see that this is actually part of a Learn document or Docs document, just depends what you're looking at. And then you can see all these different examples online. So we used to show, looking at these particular things, it'll show you the body, the request, security. So they're using OAuth for that, and some examples of how you can call that as well. So I hit upon this today, otherwise I would have told you about that yesterday when we first started. So that's actually a nice one to go and have a look at. So that's some good subject matter there. Okay, so first one there, if we have on the left, we have the input, on the right we have the output, and you can actually see determine the language. So we're trying to work out what hello world and bonjour tout le monde, I don't know how to say that, how that actually is written, and then on the right, how would you go and extract that information from there? So in particular, they've just basically gone in and worked out just what the language was. So there's an ISO standard 2-character code, English for the first one, French for the second. You can see the IDs, it's given an ID for each one of those, so you can match input with output. And there's also the confidence score to say how confident it is, that language. So it's pretty confident. If you've got any warnings or errors, it will also bring that back. And of course, there's a little bit of metadata as well associated with that. That's the sort of thing that the APIs look like, the JSON in and the JSON out there. You can also do phrase extraction. So this is the one I was saying with voice of customer might be very useful. It works best with larger documents, though, 5,120 characters up to. So it does have a limit on it. If you want to do anything more, I'd probably look at document extraction and document intelligence. That's probably going to be useful there. And yes, so there's a good example there. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So what they've pulled out is change, world, miles, single step. Ooh, it's a bit weird, that one. And journey there. So it's been able to extract that pretty easily. JSON input and output. On the left is input, on the right is output. Same with sentiment analysis, except sentiment analysis is a little bit more complex than that. So the closer you get to 1 is a positive score. The closer you get to 0 is a negative score. And somewhere in the middle, neutral, around 0.5, that would indicate that, it's really not got a strong leaning towards positive or negative. And when you have one document that has a whole lot of different sentiments in it, if it's positive and neutral, then it'll come out positive. If it's negative and neutral, it'll come out negative. So they make sense. But if it's positive and negative, then it's going to be mixed. And of course, it could have some neutral in there as well. So it will actually bring it back sentence by sentence, and then that overarching score there as well for the overall confidence. So again, it's got that value in there, and you can actually see it's broken smile because that's punctuation there, and life is good. So that's the 2 sentences that make up this one document there. Sentiment analysis. Now, name entity extraction, that's where you can pick up things like if it's a person, location, it's a famous person, perhaps an organization like Microsoft, whether it's an address or email, something like that, or URL, it can actually do a pretty good job of working out which category it falls into, which type of entity. So you see Joe as person. It also lets you know where that is in the text. So depending on whether it's right at the beginning, this one's got offset 0, so Joe is the only word actually in that sentence. So it's pretty much said 0 offset. So that's from the start of the sentence. This one here, location, is basically starting on the 12th character. So that's the offset there, and it's also bringing out the length as well. So it's got some metadata in there. It also picks out that date, and so Joe went to London, so you can see that's 12 in on Saturday, which is 22 in that sentence there. That's basically how it works there. And this is the one that I always like. It's very interesting. So depending on how you use it in a sentence, I saw Venus shining in the sky. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to pick up Venus planet, in which case when it brings back its references, it's going to refer back to Venus Wikipedia page, as opposed to Venus, the mythology, in mythology, which is the goddess of beauty. If I was to say I think Venus is a particularly beautiful entity, maybe, it could go either way. So it just depends on how you say it. I like the Mars one though, because you've got a third option for Mars. Mars is also the chocolate bar. So if you say Mars is particularly yummy, it's my favorite, then it'll probably pick up the Mars bar product. Otherwise, it will, if you say it's shining in the sky, very nice, then you might, or it's quite red in the sky, then it might say you're talking about Mars, the planet, and then of God as well, the strong God. Mars is very strong, then it would lean towards using that. So this was actually, we used to test this one out with the API tester, but that one actually no longer works as well. Like I was saying, it's getting a bit long in the tooth. So you can go and find examples in Microsoft Learn and go and test that out in there as well. Or you can try it out in your labs while you're trying that, just see whether you get that. But I remember I used to try this one quite a lot and demo this quite a lot, and it always was pretty good at working out the context. There's only a little bit of ambiguity when you say things like delicious, it should work out, but maybe strong. Might have a little bit of trouble with that, but it just depends how much information, just like large language models, how much information you give in your prompt almost, what it will actually do. So your prompt is your text in this case. Okay, so summarization, again, this is where it gets a bit sticky. Should I use this or should I use large language models? I probably lean towards large language models. The only catch is there you would have then maybe a text analytics service for the rest of your pipeline, and then you might have an Azure or OpenAI, and you might ground that on your own data. So that's where extracting the summarization, it does a pretty good job of summarizing. You don't really see too many hallucinations when you're doing anything like that. It's when you start to ask questions about the data that's when you start to get maybe some hallucinations coming in there. But if you want to use the old AI service, and maybe you just want to stick to the one service and not have too many services out there, then you can do it. So example, you've got a long paragraph about Microsoft, and you can see here